Alright, welcome back to the bench. Last time we were upgrading the SCX-24 Gladiator. Today we're going to continue. We got the tires, wheels ready to go. We got the links ready to go. And we put on the new steering links and the new steering servo. Today we're going to continue putting this back together and putting some shocks on. So the next thing we're going to do is get the shocks ready for the putting back together everything. So we will start with the shocks. Oh, that plastic is tough. Some more stickers. And here's the shocks. Feels pretty good. A lot better than these old ones that are on the SCX-24. Alright, so the shocks are pretty much put together. All you got to do is put the bushings in. Bushings are the same as the links, pretty much. They do give you an extra set of springs. Two sets of springs. Ones that are I would say a little stronger and real strong. Well, you got some silver springs, these springs, and then of course the ones that come on it. We're going to stick with the ones that are on it right now and see how that works out. But they do give you 3 sets of springs, so you can adjust the tension on the springs, or you can take them off. Whatever makes you happy. And just run them as without any springs. Alrighty. Tiny parts everywhere. And get all the parts out of the springs. Got a bushing caught in the springs. Don't want to come out. There we go. Okay, so the bushings on these, if you haven't seen before, they go through the little brass bushings. Go through the end of the shock. One side's bigger than the other. Then you have these little O-rings, little black O-rings, so tiny, and they go over the top of the bushing and lock in place, and that gives you the feeling of real bushings in a car. My fingers don't want to work today. There we go. So if I haven't said it before, I'm going to say it again. I'm using a lot of INJORA parts INJORA is not paying me for this. I bought all this myself. I just seem to I like their parts. They are well made. They are precision made, in my opinion. And they do the job. And they're not expensive. I mean, you know, they're not real cheap either. But for what you're paying for, I think it's a very fair deal on the price of the quality that you're getting. Okay, so rather than bore you with all the rest of the shocks, I'll take a pause here and we'll be right back. Okay, we got the bushings in the shocks. So we got 4 shocks. And now we'll get out the transmission holder, motor holder, whatever you want to call it. And we will put the motor in it, if I can find it. There we go. Plate on the, I think I got one screw somewhere. There is a screw in the top of this plate holding it onto the transmission. Huh. So when you put it on there, make sure you put it there where the hole for the screw in the top of the transmission goes into the hole in the top of the aluminum plate. Alrighty. Now we'll put the links on. And they go in a particular place. So the long shaft goes toward the rear end, drive shaft. So these are the rear links. So the longest links go in the middle, and they are high clearance links. So you have a bend here that goes back toward the axle. Same on the other side. The longest ones. That part goes toward the axle. And down, of course. The old arthritic hands are tough with this small stuff. As it is, that screw's the wrong one. Too short. Too short. Okay. Then the shorter ones, you want to call them shorter. I lost the link. The straight ones, the longer straight ones, go into the bottom part here, but they also go into the chassis. So we'll do that in a minute. Okay, so on the other side here in the middle, we have the other bent, shorter ones that go into the front. of course, one more. All right. Now, I'm going to put the axle on. The last thing we're going to do is put this into the chassis. Not that. This whole thing into the chassis. Because then you got to put shocks and everything else. All right, so the rear or front, we'll start with the front. Front axle. And we want to make sure we got it the correct way. The bent pieces, the bent end of the goes on the axle here. All right, I'm going to need some needle nose pliers here. My big fingers won't fit in there. If you hear me sniffling, it's because I live in Louisiana. It's spring and pollen. We have so many pine trees here, and the pollen from the pine trees are so bad, or is so bad. Okay. I don't need that long of a screw. I was thinking I did. That is way too long. Sticks out the other side. There's a mosquito in here. Yep, spring is definitely sprung. And the weather's changing. And I got a mosquito running around in my office here. Or my little craft room shadow. I kind of. Alrighty, man. That was giving me a little bit of a fit. And of course, the next one goes right in. So what's the chances of that happening? I don't know. All right, now the rear axle. Oh, I haven't taken all the stuff off of it. Rather than make you all wait on this, I'll turn the camera off and I'll be right back as soon as I get all this stuff pulled off of the axle. Okay, we got everything off the back of the axle. The little hubs that are on here are more than likely plastic. And the ones that come with the tires and wheels from INJORA are aluminum, so we'll change those. Alrighty then. We make sure that we got the axle in the right position. Okay. And the front axle goes into the brackets here. Go into, or where the links go into. These hubs don't want to stay on this axle. And if you don't know much about the hubs on these axles, there's a little pin that the hub goes over. It holds it, keeps it so it don't spin. So you don't want to lose that little pin. And I've got the, oh no I don't. I got it correct. I thought I had it upside down. And if you don't know about which way the axle goes. Take a picture before you take it apart. We got that done. We got the front done. Now we want to put the other set of links on. And we also need to put this inside the chassis to put those on. Okay, so there's little pins on the transmission holder, motor holder, skid plate, whatever you want to call it, that will hold it in place. Okay, so you can put the rest of the stuff on. So we'll put the back ones on, and they go to the top of the differential. And I have the axle in the back upside down. Put the front one on right, put the back one on upside down. All right, guys. Sometimes you make mistakes. So we will flip it over. I'm having a hard time with this little screws on this drive shaft and link. Getting everything lined up. In case you haven't heard, I'm 70 years old, got arthritis, don't really have any shakes, but man, it's hard for me to hold on to stuff with any kind of strength. But I like the hobby. I'm not going to stop because I guess a little bit tough once in a while. I'm not afraid of tough. Spent 22 years in the military, 15 years teaching high school kids. So, yeah, I'm not afraid of a little bit of tough. Alrighty then, back to where we were a minute ago. Well, first of all, let's put the link on the top of the... Yeah, this is a long screw. No, I think this is threaded on both ends, if I remember right. Yep. Okay, now make sure you get the drive shaft put together. The links go to the outside of the motor mount. Then the screw goes through the chassis, through the link, and into the motor mount. Alrighty then. We have that. Now the shocks. Make sure you put the shocks on the correct way. Go into the shock tower and onto the top of the axle. I think I will put them on the top of the axle first. All right. Then we'll put the shock into the shock tower. Alrighty, there's one. Okay, we have the shocks on the back. We have the links on the back. Put the wheels on the back. Find the hubs, nuts, wheel nuts. All right, got the rear done. Now the front. Again, make sure you put the drive shaft together before you put all this stuff on. You might be kind of mad at yourself if you get all done and the drive shaft is not right put together. I've done that before. It's the only reason I'm saying anything. Okay. Now, I did all that. I forgot to put the wishbone on the top of the differential. So, take that out. Put the wishbone on the top of the differential. Alright, now that we got that wishbone back on, get the drive shaft put together. And the wishbone connects to the motor mount through the chassis. Just like that. And then the other one side of it. And the last one's not going to line up. What is going on? It's almost like the hole is crooked. There it goes. Well, I thought it did. There we go. Okay, so I don't know if you can see or not, but the wishbone connects right here on the chassis and to the top of the differential. Okay. Now, take these hubs off, these plastic hubs. Put the aluminum ones on. Put the shocks on. The shocks connect just like they did in the back. Okay, now, if you do not like the way the shocks are feeling, which they are kind of bent in toward the chassis. Now, that can be fixed. If you feel like it's binding, and I do feel like it's binding, INJORA sent spacers. Okay, so I'm going to remove the top of this shock and put a spacer in here and see if that helps. They give you some small ones and they give you some larger ones. I'm going to use the bigger ones to pull the shock away from the chassis, away from the chassis. Yeah, that straightens them up. So these little spacers that, I don't know if that's going to focus or not, that can go in between the top of the shock and the shock towers, because there's a little bit of binding going on if you just put them in there without them. So we will put the spacers on. I'm sure these were made for lots of different applications. Yeah, that's much better. Alright, so we'll do the same on the front. I mean, realistically, you have to think about this, guys. If INJORA thought that you would need spacers for your stuff, and they put them in, that's pretty cool. I feel like some companies would have just let you fend for yourself trying to find them. Alrighty, yeah, that took the binding out. Probably should have seen that when I put them together. Okay, so now that we've got the shocks on and the spacers put in the shocks, finish up putting the wheels and tires on. All right, so there we go. Much tighter everywhere, including the steering. And we got a problem with the steering. We may have to flip over the... No, that's not going to work either. All right, that's something I'm going to have to look at. But I mean, the suspension is so much better. The look is so much better with those tires and wheels. And no more wiggle every time you move it. It's solid, much more solid than it was. So all in all, I think that's a great upgrade. All right, now that we have everything on, I got a little extra here. We got these sliders to put on the side. Holy smokes, those are heavy duty. To put on the outside, and I guess we'll put those on. These are more for, I don't know, looks. I'm sure they do make it easier to go over stuff. We got 2 sliders. Yeah, I just throw stuff on the floor and sweep it up later. And 2 brackets. Okay, now that we got tires, shocks, new suspension, looking good, I put the body back on. Put the body back on so that we can put the skid plates on, or sliders. So the way these go on is they come with a bracket, and the bracket goes on like this. So the flat spots up, the bracket angle down here is down. It screws into the chassis and into the, I'll think the name of it in a minute. Motor mount. Then the skid plate mounts on top, and it's got screws in nuts, and this end, the slot here, goes in the very front slot. And they're slotted so you can adjust them. Screw, and then the nut goes on the screw. Of course. And don't tighten it all the way down. Just snug it up a little bit so you can still move the rocker arm, skid plate, slider, whatever you want to call it. And then put the back screw, oops, and the nut. These nuts are nylon lock nuts. Okay, so we can still move this, put the body down where it needs to go, and you can line this up with the body. I already did that side. Line this up with the body, and once you get it lined up where you want it, then you just tighten them up. And we're good to go. Alrighty. And when you put the body back down, fits really nice into the sliders and doesn't look bad. It's pretty good. All right, so as you can see, we got rid of that wiggle It's definitely much better. No slop in the steering whatsoever. Okay, little side wobble. That's not too bad. Okay, so we have completed our upgrades for this week. There are other upgrades I will be doing to this over time, and definitely made it a little heavier and much better suspension, much better. Okay, we got it all put back together. Turned it on. When I turned it on, the wheels did that. Okay, which means that now my servo is centered. Okay, so what that means is that we have got to take this off. The servo horn, and place it back on. And since I put the screw from the back side of the servo horn, I'm going to have to take this brace off, this steering arm off. Pull the servo horn off. Okay, put the wheels straight. Turn everything on. Transmitter. Now, the servo should be in the center. Okay, so we want to center the wheels and then place the servo horn back on so that it's straight up and down, pretty much. And then put the screws back in. And then you can set the trim, of course, to get it exactly where you want it. It's one of those things you have to do after you put in a new servo. You got to get it centered. Now you can do all that before you put it all together by hooking everything up. Okay, now turn on the transmitter, turn on the receiver, and our steering is pretty much centered. Hit the steering trim. You can straighten out the tires, the wheels. Okay. Alrighty. And we've got a fair amount of flex, probably might even be able to go not too much more than that, which is probably a little less than we had before, but our suspension is a whole lot better. This vehicle is top heavy. with all the stuff on the back. So I think the next thing we'll do is we'll get some brass hubs. Brass differential clovers. Make it a little less wanting to tip over, with a little more weight down low. Alright, so just a little show off here. This is my updated Gladiator, my rock bouncer, my 1/24 scale trailer. We are ready to hit the off-road parks. Alright guys, thanks for watching. You guys have a great day.